Graham Platner's campaign finally collapsing entirely, and perhaps the entire Democrat Party with it. The theft of your tax money. It continues to be the focus of the Trump administration, and for those wanting some accountability in all of this mess, some good news to report today. It's Friday, July 10th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. Be sure to bookmark and regularly check in for the very latest headlines written by journalists you can actually trust. Real legitimate media coming out of the Heartland. It's at heartlandernews.com. If you haven't been there, hope you'll go check it out. Read each and every day and all week long. Great work going on there. For just some of it here today, my name's Chris Stigall, and welcome into the show. You know, I see today a story at the Washington Free Beacon that says the crushing cost of living is driving youth to socialism. And this is according to the New York Times. The executive editor of the Times, a guy called Joe Kahn, just did an interview in which he boasts about his 2,200-person newsroom, talks about the need for skeptical editors, and including those on the political right who ask, what are we missing here? The Times newsroom investigative effort to discover what's attracting young people to socialism sure could have benefited from that kind of scrutiny, but unfortunately it is absent, they write. Under the print headline, groundswell for Democrat socialists rooted in crushing cost of living, and the online headline, how economy anxiety is driving the Democrat socialist surge, there were interviews, many leaders, strategists, and whatnot, arguing that the driving force in the primary results and the group's expanding influence, in a sense, especially among young people, the economy, and that it is not working for many people. The article also speaks about layoffs in white-collar industries, that the threat of job displacement from AI, rising cost of living. The folks at the Free Beacon say that this article and the headline itself is flawed because there is no groundswell for Democrat socialists. There were a few low turnout Democrat primaries in heavily left-wing New York City districts where socialists did well. Look, that may be, and I know for a fact that you have to look closely at these elections and respect them. As I said earlier in the week, it is critically important to respect and understand that this is a very real movement, Democrat socialists. And while the Free Beacon criticizes the New York Times for over-exaggerating the, quote, groundswell, the fact of the matter is there is a movement in mainstream media, there is a movement amongst the American Democrat Party to convince young people that their lives aren't going to improve at all unless a very select few are empowered to make everything fair and equitable for everybody else. I mean, for years, politicians in Washington have talked about making life more affordable for American families. The fact of the matter is, this president is actually doing something about it, and that is what the Democrats are most terrified about. I mean, just consider two big developments that haven't gotten nearly enough attention, in my view, in the last days. We've talked a little about it here. First, let's talk about prescription drugs. For decades, Americans paid the highest prices in the world for many of the exact same medicines that are sold overseas. It's the same pill, the same manufacturer, and yet American families often paid 2, 5, or even 10 times more. Well, the Trump administration asked a simple question. Why should Americans subsidize lower prices for everyone else? And so he came up with the most favored nation policy system, and it challenged that broken system. The administration has now reached an agreement with 17 pharmaceutical companies to bring prices in line in this country with the lowest rates paid anywhere else in the developing world. And the savings really have been stunning. Medications that once cost over $1,000 a month are now available for much less, maybe a few hundred a month. Families dealing with everything from diabetes, obesity, Hep C, HIV, asthma, infertility, they're finally catching a break. And that's money staying in American pockets instead of leaving the country. But there's another story, not just on pharmaceuticals. There's another story that could matter even more in the long run, and we've talked about it here, Trump accounts. And you could read more about the success of Trump accounts at heartlandernews.com. You know, at first glance, it sounds like just another government program, but it's not. It's designed to create owners, investors, makers, not takers. A daily fancy coffee habit or a pack-a-day smoking habit, that can easily cost thousands of dollars a year. And I'm not judging you on that because I certainly enjoy a good cigar and I love my coffee. Spend your money how you want, of course. But imagine putting even a part of that toward your child's future instead. At a reasonable long-term return, investing just $2,000 a year from birth could grow to around $100,000 by adulthood. Max it out, and that young person could start life with well over $200,000 already invested. That changes everything, these Trump accounts. If you haven't looked into them yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. Again, particularly if you have kids under the age of 18, and the younger they are, the better the news is. Instead of beginning adulthood buried in student loans and debt, imagine young people starting with actual assets. Instead of asking what government owes them, they start thinking about what they can build. The siren song of this socialist crap that the New York Times is singing becomes less attractive. For generations, we have taught young Americans how to borrow money. Well, Trump accounts begin teaching them how to actually own something. And ownership, if you own anything, you know, ownership changes you. People who own part of the economy have a real stake in its success. One policy lowers the cost of living today. The other helps build wealth for the next generation. And that's not simple politics. That's a vision for a stronger America. And I got a prediction for you. When I realized the New York Times and others may get excited about the prospect of rising Democrat socialists promising the moon to young people and turning the tide away from Republican voters and into Democrat voters, I've actually got a prediction. I think what Besson at Treasury, what President Trump have done with Trump accounts in particular, I think 20 years from now, folks might actually look back at this period of time and say Trump accounts were one of the smartest government programs ever created. Not because Washington made anybody rich, but because it helped turn a country of borrowers into a nation of actual owners. For centuries, political thinkers have explained that private property is the foundation of a free society. De Tocqueville saw 200 years ago, farmers with their own piece of land thought differently about farming. They planned longer term. If you remember Rush talking about the first pilgrims, when the collectivist attempt to raise agricultural products for the community to share, it was clear that there were some that were either just not talented enough or willing to work as hard as others were. And so they broke up the system and gave everyone their own individual pieces of land to farm. And you had some succeed wildly and some not so much. This is a tale as old as time. Farmers with their own piece of land think differently, just like everybody else. They plan long term. They invest instead of blowing money. They build things up instead of just demanding more, and cared about protecting what they had. And that's the magic of the Trump account. You know, a young person gets something no generation had before them, a small ownership stake in the American economy before they even know how to read. For 18 straight years, watching money grow quietly, steadily, whether anyone adds another dime or not. Before they can even vote or sign a lease or start a business, they learn one of the biggest lessons in life. Real wealth comes from patience, ownership, and time, not from politics or handouts. Just picture an 18-year-old opening that statement and seeing their money, not from luck or a lucky break, just from time doing its thing. Millions of them stepping into adulthood, already owning a slice of the economy in the same year they cast their first vote. This isn't just some savings plan. It's really a citizenship program if you think about it. We have spent generations teaching young people how to borrow, taking out loans before they even had a diploma, credit cards before a real paycheck. Trump accounts turn that on its head. They start teaching how to own years before owing anybody anything. A free country runs best when regular citizens have something real to protect and a genuine stake in the future. If this shifts how a whole generation thinks about work, building, and what belongs to them, history might just call Trump accounts one of the most important ideas a government ever implemented. Check back with me. We'll see if I'm right. Meanwhile, the president is also doing something incredibly important along with the vice president on the front of fraud. Probably the most important thing that we can do. Cracking down on people stealing your tax dollars. Let's go to 375 to start it today. This is Vice President Vance continuing to drive home the point that tax money deserves protection. And this administration's laser focus on it has not relented in the least.
So what I take very seriously as your vice president, what Derek Van Orden and Brian Stigall take very seriously as your congressional representatives, and what Donald Trump takes seriously as the president of the United States is this sacred promise that it exists between the government of the United States and its citizens. That when you pay your tax dollars, it goes to the people who need it, not to the fraudsters, which is why we're throwing those fraudsters in prison. It's exactly where they belong.
And over at the Secretary of Education's office, Linda McMahon in clip 80 here, Aaron. Linda McMahon similarly is looking at the fraud, and there is a lot of it. Stunning amounts of it, as a matter of fact, which is why the federal government, in my view, really shouldn't be in the education business at all. But Linda McMahon similarly said, we're looking at student loans hard, and there's been a lot of theft there, too. We're cracking down on that. Take a listen.
We're just beginning now to really look into the fraud that you're referencing, the K through 12 schools. We've been focusing quite a bit of our fraud detection, if you will, in higher education, at the moment. And we have, through our student loan program, the FAFSA program, we have actually identified and prevented now over $2 billion in fraud. So I'm very pleased that we've been able to do that. And now we're looking more at the K through 12 issues that you were raising. And I can assure you that we will be following through with our departments to see where this money has been going. If fraudsters are just seemingly trying to pick the pocket of American taxpayers everywhere we turn. So as we're looking at schools, as we're looking at the programs that are going out, we will be focusing on this fraud as well. Well, we're just...
hugely significant and important, and glad to see the Trump administration continuing to stay focused on that while putting money in the pockets of average Americans every day. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, a daycare owner who prosecutors said tried to flee the United States 2 days after shutting her center down pleaded guilty to fraud charges this week. One count of wire fraud, one count of conspiracy to defraud the United States. The Learning Center, remember that? Leering Center, pocketed millions meant to feed children during the pandemic. Charges said they received more than $850,000 in fraudulent funds alone, using most of that money to buy real estate. Separate claims of about $4.6 million filed and taken from the Federal Child Care Assistance Program. She notified the state in February that the Future Leaders was closing. That same day, she booked a flight to London. The sentencing date has not yet been secured. So that's good news. You'll be seeing her locked away for a good long while. And then on the H-1B visa front, fraud, they're cracking down on that too. The Labor Department Inspector General telling Fox Business that the Trump administration has launched its first major investigation into the displacement of American workers through abuses of H-1B. The move comes as the administration continues its anti-fraud initiative spearheaded by J.D. Vance. Dozens of subpoenas have been issued. The Labor Department investigating potential human trafficking cases as a result of visa fraud. Says the Inspector General, this is another example where fraud is fueling violent crime. Much of the visa and human trafficking that we see when it comes to this foreign labor is tied to cartels. It's tied to transnational gangs. And this is the work that we should be doing, not only to make America safe again, but to make America affordable again. So all good. I mean, this is very, very positive stuff. They continue to remember that you and I want accountability as much as we want savings and we want the cost of everything to come down. We also want people who are ripping us off and breaking our laws and getting away with it. It seems we want accountability. And the Trump administration is delivering it. Speaking of accountability, oh my. Graham Platner. Well, it appears that old Graham is done. We've been covering him here for a few weeks now, wondering how bad does it have to get until he finally steps down. We talked to you earlier in the week about, and you've undoubtedly been following the story of the rape allegations against him, among the Nazi tattoo charges and the just kind of repugnant personal life that he led. But, you know, whatever. Everybody's fallen, chance for redemption and all that. The problem is the stories just kept cascading. And now Jen Psaki in clip 78, poor Jen over there at MS Now, she's very, very disappointed. She's very, very upset that the journalism that should have probably told her this all along, if she'd actually been interested in listening to it and actually done any journalism, they could have avoided this. But now she's very upset that I guess she's been duped or some such thing.
It is an end to what has been an unpredictable, incredibly tumultuous, at times fascinating simply because of the political story, and ultimately deeply enraging political career for Graham Platner, enraging for all of us. And we have covered this race from the very beginning on purpose, because I think it's important that we don't put our heads in the sand and just project upon all of you what we think and only talk to people at a table in Washington, D.C. I think one of the most important things we can do is listen to voters, to watch and to try to understand what is happening in this country, even if it doesn't totally make sense. It is an
I know you can hardly watch that with a straight face. Me too. She's interested in listening to the American people, right? And she's so frustrated by Graham Platner. If she was interested in actually listening to the American people knew exactly who Graham Platner was, but they continued to soldier on. It's been embarrassing to watch these Democrats now have to circle back and say, after all, well, yeah, boy, he really should step aside. You know, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, all these people that were full steam ahead on Graham Platner when people were asking legitimate questions back then, and they ignored them. It came to multiple rape and sexual assault allegations cascading down on him before they would actually pump the brakes on the guy. David Axelrod in number 79 here. He, too, very disappointed in Graham Platner and his campaign and the announcement they're suspending the campaign. They're all so disappointed. They're just learning about this, folks. Despite you and I talking about Graham Platner for weeks and weeks here, David Axelrod in clip number 79, very, very disappointed. They're all so upset to hear what Mr. Platner's done and how he's handling himself as he's exiting stage right.
Think about how he did this.
I thought it was disgraceful, honestly. You know, he had an opportunity to accept responsibility. There was nowhere in the 11 minutes that he ascribed any of this to his own actions. You know, it was very Trumpian. It was, you know, it was blame the accusers. It was don't accept responsibility. It was martyr yourself. And it was really, I thought, a bad moment for him. You know, to completely duck responsibility for his own actions and blame everyone but himself, including the accusers, was just a terrible mistake in my view.
Yeah. Well, Graham Platner, we hardly knew ye. Rest in political peace. He's done, and Democrats are now trying to run from him. So what does that leave in his wake? A new poll shows Senator Susan Collins of Maine with a lead now, but still within the margin of error for potential replacements. Platner announced the suspension of his campaign after scores of Democrats called for him to step down. New poll shows the race tightening for Democrats seeking to take his place. But Democrats are fighting mightily right now amongst themselves over who that should be and who should run the party and who should govern going forward. And what's fascinating is this is not just in Maine, it's going on across the country. This from Axios, the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee chair. They are baffling fellow Democrats, says Axios, by pouring money into yet another competitive House primary. The DCCC has racked up a spotty record in its attempts to intervene in Democrat primaries this cycle, leading some House Democrats to question why they're paying dues to the campaign committee. Two primary candidates in California and Maine, backed by the DCCC's endorsement and ad spending, have already lost their races. The DCCC is running a $200,000 joint ad buy in Arizona's 1st district in its largest primary investment to date. The ad states, "We Democrats willing to actually fight for us, courageous leaders who are going to stand up to MAGA Republicans, leaders like this particular candidate." In May, the DCCC threw money into their Red to Blue program, which provides resources to Democrats running in GOP-held House open seats. I get the argument, says one Democrat, that you want to back the person you think can beat the Republican, but unless the other candidate is a Democrat in name only, I think they need to stay out. The lingering resentment, says Axios, between the DCCC and some other candidates has been growing, particularly in places like Maine, in Arizona. So it's been fascinating because you see that the House Democrats are trying to stave off the rising surge of the Graham Platners and the socialism that's going on in New York City, and they're having a harder and harder time with it because the Democrats are embracing it. Their party is embracing this lunatic stuff. And, you know, guys like James Carville, maybe Jen Psaki, though I doubt it, maybe who'd we just play there? David Axelrod. Those guys may pretend, at least verbally, that they don't want this socialism stuff. I don't know whether they really do at heart or not, but I know they're worried. And the DCCC is worried because the numbers don't look good, at least right now. I am not suggesting this is a slam dunk, but let's go over to number 73 here, Aaron, if we could. Combing over the numbers of what things look like now for Democrats as it stands today. And again, lots can change. November is still a long ways away, but take a listen to some of the numbers as it relates to some of these House seats. And you see what the DCCC is doing. They're trying to flip seats. They're trying to beat Republicans. But the fact of the matter is they're very worried about the candidate quality. So they're injecting themselves against their own mob in trying to stave off the wackos in certain districts where socialism is still not going to play well. And listen to some of this data from the vaudevillian at CNN.
Prediction markets think it might get even worse.
It could get even worse. In fact, it's likely to get even worse. So if you look at the Kalshi prediction market and the chance that 6 House Democrats go down to defeat, lose their primary in 2026, this number has consistently over the last week or so been hovering 80, 90%. And when we talk about history books, the history books, right? If, in fact, 6 House Democrats went down to defeat in 2026, it would be by far, it would be the largest number in a post-redistricting cycle for Democrats. And get this, over 50 years. That's why I got this picture of the Tea Party on your screen right now, because you know what? It's 250, but also it's a new Tea Party for Democrats.
Prediction markets think it might get even worse.
It could.
82% chance that 6 or more House Democrats lose their primary this year, which would be the largest number in over 50 years. Now, that's a prediction market. That's not scientific, not suggesting things couldn't change, because they certainly could. Newt Gingrich in clip 74. Newt is watching this rather baffled that the old guard Democrat Party that he battled back in the 90s, now he's watching this party seemingly fall apart before our very eyes.
You're watching the collapse of the oldest political party in the world. Democratic Party goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. And what you're seeing right now is that nobody who has common sense has the courage to stand up to people who are objectively crazy. I mean, it's not like they have the wrong ideas or the wrong ideology. They live on a planet that doesn't exist. You start talking about seizing the means of production, which was a great phrase if you're Vladimir Lenin or if you're Mao Zedong. But who in America is going to vote for that? We talk about they want totally open borders. We ran that experiment. It was called the Biden administration. It was totally repudiated. They want one of their platform planks, totally eliminate the police. Now, first of all, anybody who lives in a big city that has lots of criminals has to say to themselves, will I really be safer if, in fact, my left-wing crazy friends abolish the police? And, of course, the answer is going to be no. So I think you could be drifting towards one of the most decisively defined elections in American history. And we're working on a platform of the American people, issues where you're at 80, 85% support versus people who are crazy. And I think that could be what the core of the campaign is.
I think the guy may be right. He's smart. He knows history well, and he's certainly been around and seen some elections come and go in the House of Representatives through his life and through his career politically. So could we see, again, and not that the Republicans are necessarily lighting the world on fire and exciting voters. I don't want to leave you with that impression because I'm well aware the Republican Party has left much to be desired. But when you're dealing with the kind of crazy that Newt just expressed, and we all see and understand, it may be that the electorate is left with little choice but to continue to empower the Republicans, which could lead to larger majorities for the Republicans in the House, which could mean Trump's agenda could go foot on the gas pedal for the final 2 years. If President Trump manages to hang on to the House and the Senate, it would be, again, breaking with history. That does not happen often when you've got one party in control of both chambers as well as the executive branch. Typically, after 2 years, you see that change. At least one chamber flips. It's only not done that, I think, 3 times in history. So could this fall be a fourth? Democrats might just be bonkers enough to make that happen. Maybe. We shall see. Again, not making a prediction. But Gavin Newsom knows. He's very, very concerned about it. In clip number 77, Gavin Newsom is very aware of what it could mean. There's an investigation going right now for old Gavin. So he knows the walls are closing in. He's desperate to get that to stop. And he he knows he may just be months away from real trouble and political extinction.
Yeah, look, we got to take back the House of Representatives or we'll lose this republic. I talked about this Trump administration as the great grift because this is a corruption story. We will lose the republic. I made a point on July 4th. If you haven't seen my speech, you should take a look at the speech. You'll know exactly my mindset. We will lose this country unless we're vigilant about what's going on in terms of election security. This is this is serious. A 5-alarm fire. This guy is not screwing around. He's just winding up. More unhinged by the hour.
Spoken like a guy for whom the future is quite uncertain, not just politically, but probably legally too. California, by the way, while we're on it, this from the Daily Signal. For generations, California represented the American dream, a place where families moved in search of opportunity, good paying jobs, and a better life. Today, the Golden State earning a very different reputation. For 2026, California has been ranked the 3rd worst state to move to, according to Consumer Affairs annual state rankings. Who's worse than California? This is rough. Didn't see this coming. Louisiana and New Mexico. Apparently not great states to move to. Sorry, Louisiana, New Mexico. I can't speak to it. I've only visited both states once. Haven't lived there. I don't know that I know anybody that lives there, actually. The report evaluates states based on affordability, safety, economic strength, healthcare, education, and quality of life. California's ranking was driven largely by poor scores in affordability, safety, and economic strength. The state ranked 23rd in healthcare and education, 14th in quality of life, finished dead last in affordability, 49th in safety, making California the 2nd most dangerous state in the nation. It ranked 41st in economic strength. The report comes as California recorded the nation's highest net out migration for the 3rd consecutive year, meaning more people expressed interest in leaving California than moving to it. And they write that it wasn't always that way. For much of the 20th century, California was a magnet for migration, drawing people from across the country. But yeah, that's no more. And pretty devastating numbers for the state of California. It's a beautiful place. I mean, certainly anybody that's visited, you understand that. The weather's, the landscape, the whole thing, it's gorgeous, but absolutely destroyed by scumbags like Gavin Newsom. So that's that. Tennessee. I don't know if you saw the conductor over the 4th of July, a Tennessee railway conductor who got on the microphone during 4th of July to praise the United States as, quote, the greatest country on the face of the planet, and telling anyone who disagreed they were free to leave. A guy called Jack Peterson. He is a seasonal conductor for Chattanooga's historic Incline Railway. He was terminated after a July 4th video surfaced on TikTok, in which, and I saw this video, by the way, easy to find if you want to go find it. To the very, very few Americans in here, happy Independence Day, he told passengers. To the rest of you, welcome to the greatest country on the face of the planet, and if you disagree, you can leave. The clip drew abuse from passengers, with one person heard shouting, "Shut up." The Chattanooga Area Regional Transportation Authority, which operates the Incline Railway, said Peterson was dismissed immediately after management reviewed the video and received passenger complaints. Every passenger who boards our railway deserves to feel respected and welcomed. I don't know. I've never been on the this rail line. I don't know exactly what it is. To the very, very few Americans in here, happy Independence Day. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was primarily foreign travelers or visitors there in Chattanooga that were taking that ride. And maybe that's the part of it that he should have left out. If he just said, we're celebrating the greatest country on the face of the planet, and if you disagree, you can leave. I think if he had probably said that, he would have gotten away with it. But the fact that he prefaced with, there aren't many Americans on the train here today, so let me just tell you, if you don't like that we're great, get out. And again, not that I'm sure most of you even disagree with that sentiment, but to say it while you're at work publicly over the loudspeaker, probably a better way to finesse it. Meanwhile, speaking of speech, down in Florida, a Trump-appointed judge ruled against part of Ron DeSantis' Stop Woke Act this week, saying that it violates the First Amendment. And this is pretty frustrating, because if you're someone who believes that taxpayer money that pays for universities, and ergo the salaries of professors on universities' campuses that are supported by taxpayers, if you believe then that taxpayers ought to have a say in policy or political activity or whatever that goes on that campus, this is a frustrating story. In a 2-1 decision, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit blocked the higher education portion of the 2022 Sunshine Law that was meant to stop left-wing gender ideology and critical race theory. In 2022, DeSantis signed off on a law that prohibited professors and workplace training from teaching about race and gender in a way that induces guilt or blame in the classroom under threat of penalty. Florida argued the professor's classroom speech belongs to the state because they are paid by the government. Judge Britt Grant, President Trump appointed this judge to the bench during his first term, ruled that, quote, if the First Amendment offers any boundary of protection at all for public university classrooms, this statute crosses it. Ron DeSantis' office, for their part, said state universities are funded by taxpayers and directed by elected officials and their appointees. The state has both a right and a responsibility to ensure instruction at these universities is consistent with the underlying mission and to exclude indoctrination and ideological agendas. Florida was correct to bar CRT and DEI, and we have the right to do so. He went on to say, we've seen so many institutions get corrupted by ideology, and universities have been perhaps the most common. The Constitution does not block us from fighting back against these ideological fads and from ensuring that our institutions stand on solid intellectual foundation. This is a clear and unfortunate example of judicial overreach. This is one of those things where it's very frustrating to hear a train conductor. That's a private company, so don't misunderstand. I know the difference. And a private company has every right to fire or hire anybody they want. So private company decides to fire that conductor because he says, this is a great country, and if you don't like it, leave. That guy gets the axe. Professors can be woke and talk about gender ideology and DEI and run the country down on the taxpayer's dime, and these judges protect their speech. It's frustrating. Those are two very frustrating stories to read in the same week, but there you go. I just wanted to bring you up to date on that. Meanwhile, the Tyler Robinson case, the Charlie Kirk murder trial, going on this week. Lots of loathsome stuff coming out of the X universe, and I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name names, but it's kind of amazing how the Charlie Kirk murder conspiracy theorists are really beginning to unravel. This is their last gasp. I once coined the phrase revelation addiction. Revelation addiction, meaning that there are people that are peddling for their own personal gain, their own financial gain, shows like this, but they're doing shows that generally imply they have the inside scoop on something, and in the next episode they're going to share it, or for a $5 subscription fee you'll get the very latest. You know the type. It's called revelation addiction. It's the new modern day soap opera. For younger people who don't know soap operas that used to air on network television, you know, The Bold and the Beautiful, The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, all of that stuff. Usually every hour of the soap opera ended with some cliffhanger. Someone fell down the stairs or was found face down in the pool or whatever. And, you had to tune in next time to find out what happened next. Well, in the modern era, that's what people are doing on YouTube and on social media. They have the real scoop on who really killed Charlie Kirk. And next time they'll tell you, or subscribe and they'll tell you, but they never actually produce evidence. I mean, I've even seen some who kind of went down the path of suggesting that there was some big conspiracy around the murder of Charlie Kirk. I've even seen some this week say there's no evidence now that suggests any of that is true. And if there is evidence, then it should be produced. Otherwise, it's very, very clear because the evidence has been produced and it's pretty ironclad that this guy, Tyler Robinson, is the one who murdered him. And yet there are shows, and frankly, there are millions of people that are still addicted to the concept that there's something bigger at play here. Former roommate of Tyler Robinson, accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk, told prosecutors Robinson expressed regret a day after killing Charlie and planned to hand himself over to police. The recorded interview with Robinson's former roommate and romantic partner, Lance Twiggs, was presented as prosecutors tried to convince a Utah judge they have sufficient evidence against Robinson to warrant a trial. Part of a week-long hearing that featured lengthy back-and-forth arguments about what evidence should be admissible. And it goes on. You have seen it, I'm sure, if you're interested in it. I don't watch murder trials. I'm not particularly interested in the back and forth of murder trials. I know that it is gripping television. I mean, I think there are whole networks devoted to murder trials. I don't happen to be one. Aaron, are you a guy? Maybe you are, and I'm not picking on you if you are, because again, I understand there's a huge appetite for it. Are you a murder trial guy? Because it's big viewing.
Not particularly. I've just been tuning into this one because of the, implications for our party and, what happened last year and all that. But nah.
Why do you think, and I'm not asking for an answer. I'm not going anywhere with it. I'm just asking you, why do you think there is such intense interest in this particular murder trial? Now, Charlie is famous. Charlie is the leader of a political movement for we conservatives. Charlie was maybe next to Rush Limbaugh, one of the most articulate voices for conservatism and tradition and the Christian faith. He was a wonderkind. I mean, he was a force, a phenomenon, turning point. We've never seen anything like him. And so to have his life cut short was devastating for conservatives, particularly young conservatives. So I'm mindful of the investment there. But having said all that, it seems outwardly like the evidence is pretty clear who murdered him, but there is heavy, heavy interest in believing that that's not true on its face, and there's heavy interest in this trial. And I'm just trying to understand it, and maybe you have a point of view that I don't, which is why I'm putting you on the spot and asking you. Is there something I'm missing here?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you think it's pretty cut and dry as you see it, or no?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You do? Yeah. So do you agree with me that you think it's just a cynical play for clicks and profit to suggest otherwise, or they
100%.
Sincerely believe it?
Oh, no. I think it's for clicks, for money, for profit, for clout.
And we live in a culture where people are pretty addicted to that, right? So there's a healthy audience for it, probably millions, who love the idea of what we're seeing is not real and just around the corner is the truth, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. I don't know. I'll watch it somewhat out of the corner of my eye, but I'm not a blow by blow, day by day. I mean, there are plenty of shows and plenty of places you can go for your daily coverage of trial stuff. But I just find it's heartbreaking to see Charlie's parents, Eric Kirk, these people dragged, his closest friends and allies being dragged by people who are saying just some of the most loathsome stuff. some of the worst people in this industry, and by this industry, I say, people that do kind of what we're doing here, that they have managed to take their sizable audiences and turn them against a widow is really creepy. It's weird. To put it mildly, weird is not a strong enough word for it. I find it pretty dark. And the fact that there are people cashing checks on it, pretty gross, but whatever. I'm not here to litigate that today. You'll think about it what you want to think about it. I understand. This one's a funny one from Microsoft. Axios reports that Microsoft's latest environmental report shows the growing tension between its race to build AI infrastructure and its long-standing climate commitment. Right. As I have long followed this one, I'm fascinated to learn that Microsoft took over 3 Mile Island, the old shutdown, rundown nuclear power plant. They've taken it over because they want to fire up nuclear production again to power their AI needs at Microsoft. And it's hilarious to me that as we try to online more and more data centers and more AI infrastructure, we're going to need more energy than ever before. And guess what? Solar panels and the wind ain't going to cut it. We need lots of energy and we need it fast. And if we're not going to go nuclear, then you know what we're going to need fast? Coal-fired power plants. China is building both, by the way, at a record clip. China is building coal-fired power plants and AI data centers like this. And we're all arguing about it here, courtesy of Chinese propaganda, I believe in large measure, but certainly also because the climate cultists, and this is so funny. So these two worlds have now collided. The left-wing climate cultists for years, in big tech in particular, are now being hoisted by their own petard because they need more power fast to advance in the AI arms race. The report mirroring recent disclosures from Google and Amazon, whose emissions and resource use have also climbed along with AI growth. Like its tech peers, Microsoft's environmental impact indicators largely continued moving upward. Its total greenhouse gas emissions are up 25%, fueled by both its growth in digital infrastructure and the company also saying a key measure of data center water use efficiency has improved 25%. But the big picture, says Axios, is Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta account for roughly 2/3 of the data center power capacity among the top 15 tracked by financial firm Jefferies, meaning their environmental strategies increasingly shape the industry's footprint. Climate goals established earlier this decade are becoming harder to achieve as AI infrastructure expands. Yes. Look, ladies and gentlemen, the very fact of the matter is if you're watching this on YouTube right now, on your phone or on your laptop, and by the way, the very production of this show, it all depends on data centers. Your phone, this thing, if you have one, and I trust that you do, again, perhaps you're watching this right now on your phone. It's all data center driven. Your entire life, if you're on social media, from Facebook to X, Instagram, and on and on and on, Reddit, it's all data center driven, and we need more power, lots of it. It's not going away. Do you honestly think we're going to start powering this stuff down? Do you think big tech is going to scale back, throttle back to be eco-friendly? I don't think so. So I find it amusing that some of the loudest voices lecturing us about our energy use now need it more than ever before. Pretty hilarious and ironic, but here we are. Just a little note down there in Palm Springs in California, down in Palm Beach, Florida. There's a new airport. I've flown into this airport before. It is extraordinarily convenient and efficient. So it's only natural. Give me number clip 81 here. Eric Trump on, I don't know if it's Trump Force One, but it is a Trump plane as it made its first official landing at the brand newly named airport down there in Florida. They had a little celebration. Take a listen.
5:01 a.m., the name of the airport changed from Palm Beach International to President Donald J. Trump International Airport. And there's no way in hell I was letting UPS be the first plane to land. So we got on Trump Force One, and Lawrence, you've been on it, and Brian, you've certainly been on it, and Emily, you've probably been on it as well. But we had to be the last plane to take off out of PBI. And then air traffic control comes on and, welcome to Trump Force One. You're the first plane to ever land, at this airport. And so we touched down at exactly 5:01 a.m. this morning. And it was a beautiful day. I don't think there's anybody more synonymous with Palm Beach than Donald Trump, and maybe all of Florida. And, it's his home. He absolutely loves the state, won the state by a major margin. You know, and this is the plane that carried him to victory. A lot of people will argue 3 times, but certainly 2. It was the backdrop of so many of the presidential campaign stops. It's so many stops with us as a family. So it was an incredibly special moment for us this morning. So
that's pretty cool. Trump International down there in Palm Beach. Meanwhile, the Rubio team is bringing together 60 nations there at the State Department to confront a growing threat. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will host representatives from more than 60 countries next week for a counterterrorism summit focused on what the Trump administration describes as a resurgence of transnational political extremism. The July 15th gathering in Washington follows President Trump's counterterrorism strategy released earlier this year, prioritizing disrupting politically motivated violent groups, including anarchist movements and what the administration describes as Antifa-affiliated networks. According to the State Department, the meeting will bring together ministers and senior officials from Europe, Asia, and the Western Hemisphere to improve intelligence sharing and law enforcement cooperation against politically motivated violence. So that'll be one to keep a sharp eye on. Jeb Bush, the former Florida governor, said this week that Iranian drones are believed to be in Cuba, and he's sounding the alarm. Quote, Iran has been a consistent threat to the united security interests of the country, certainly of Israel, Bush said during a United Against Nuclear Iran event. And now we see that it's not just Israel and the United States, but the Gulf region as well. I also want to point out to the press that there are reports there are 300 of these drones in Cuba. I think it's important to recognize that Iran has consistently been working with Cuba, Venezuela, prior to the departure of Maduro, creating instability, and not just Cuba, but certainly in the region, Bush said. He praised the current administration's efforts against Iran's military capabilities, saying we're on the verge of creating a much more peaceful world by standing up against this aggression. And speaking of Iran, President Trump has halted some strikes for now, but they've been, as we talked about Wednesday, President Trump pretty much pledged, we're back at it, we're going to start hammering him, and they have. Trump has declared the temporary U.S.-Iran truce over. A week of tensions have escalated after Iranian forces struck commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. Analysts are saying Iran used the negotiation period to strengthen its leverage over the waterway. Iran is attempting to coerce Gulf states and others to acquiesce to Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's declaration capped off 2 weeks of increasingly firm signals from Washington. Administration officials publicly pursuing negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, reopening the strait as well. Trump was briefed by the defense secretary and the Joint Chiefs chair on options that officials described internally as finishing the job. We're either going to make a deal or we're going to finish the job, okay? Trump told reporters at the Oval Office, and it won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people. Vice President Vance previously described the administration's thinking in operational terms. He said the temporary ceasefire gave global energy markets time to replenish oil supplies. But the pivot back to war may have been implicit in a world that simply adapted quickly to the lack of Iranian oil. So that means gas prices are going back up, but President Trump says, all right, if we must, we must. We're going to finish the job. Iran also hatching a fresh plot to kill the president, according to Israel. Israel has shared new intelligence with the United States that it is said is a fresh plan to kill President Trump. Iran for years has vowed openly to retaliate against Trump for the assassination of their top general of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Israeli embassy in Washington declined to comment. Iran's mission to the United Nations didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. President Trump said they want to take out the U.S. leader. Me, I'm on every list. I saw it this morning. I'm on every single one of their lists, and so far, I guess I've been a little bit lucky, but maybe that doesn't last very long, said the president. So he's mindful of that, and we shall see. Not been a lot of news, actually. Don't you find it a little strange? There's not been a lot of coverage, frankly, of President Trump and his most recent strikes in Iran. Gas prices on the tick up. It's just not been a lot of talk about that. So we'll continue to monitor that here, and you can check in again as usual at heartlandernews.com, heartlandernews.com for all the latest headlines. Let's close with a palate cleanser this week, shall we? Caroline Leavitt, back from maternity leave. I've missed her personally. I don't know about you. She had a little mic drop moment with CNN's Caitlin Collins. Give me number 82 as we wrap up the week here. Aaron, Caroline's back. We love it. Here we go.
In terms of what that looks like. But inflation is down from where it was. As measured by the overall CPI, it has slowed to an average 2.5% pace. This is down from what the president inherited the president inherited 2.9% in January. Today, it's at about 2.5%. So we're trending in the right direction with more to come. And I would remind you, when President Trump left office in his first term, inflation was 1.7%. And the previous administration jacked it up to a record high 9%. So again, in 10 months, the president has clawed us out of this hole. He's kept it low at 2.5%. And we believe that number is going to continue to decline, especially as energy and oil prices continue to decline as well.
It wasn't high under Biden. They're just saying it's not.
Well, nobody reported on it being high under Biden. My predecessor was standing at this podium, but now you want to ask me a lot of questions about it, which I'm happy to answer. But I will just add, there's a lot more scrutiny on this issue from this press corps than there was. Well, and the previous administration said that too. My predecessor stood up at this podium and she said, inflation doesn't exist. She said the border was secure. And people like you just took her at her word. And those were two utter lies. Everything I'm telling you is the truth backed by real factual data. And you just don't want to report on it because you want to push untrue narratives about the president.
She's back, and I'm glad to see it. And that'll do it today from America's Heartland. Be sure to keep up to date on all the very latest news throughout the week from an honest, straightforward approach. It's all at heartlandernews.com. Subscribe to Heartlander News here on YouTube, by the way. Give us a like, comment too, if you're so inclined. We're sure glad to have you along. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next time right here on Heartlander News.